القرآن للذكر فهل من مدكر.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. In this video we will now be covering those sifat without any opposites. So as-sifat ghayr al-mutabaddah, or also it's known as as-sifat la didda laha. Both of the terminologies are correct. As mentioned in the introduction to the lesson, the sifat are divided to those categories of opposites and those without opposites. We have already covered those sifat with opposites, so we will now look at 6 of the 7 sifat without opposites. So we are going to, there's a list of all the 7. Qalqala will not be covered in this particular lesson because it needs some further explanation. So we'll be covering as-safir, Leen, Inhiraf, Takrir, which is also known as a Takrar, are given both terminologies, and Tafashi and Istitala. So let's get started straight away. In the first category, which is as-safir, which means the whistle, the safir applies to the letters Sad, Sin, and Za. So these letters have a whistling sound, and the whistling sound is due to the small passage which is created when the tip of the tongue touches the lower incisors. So with the Sad, if you make the Sad or the Sin, any of these, when you're touching the lower incisors, there's a very small passage which is created by the tongue because it's very, very close to the palate. So if we say Sa or Su or Za, then a very small passage is created, and therefore it's a small whistling sound that is created with the Sad and the Sin. So the Sad and the Sin has the whistling sound, and the Za has a buzzing sound. So the category has been named as-safir, the whistle, but Za has a small buzzing sound, but it is all due to the small passage which is created when the tip of the tongue touches the lower incisors, and that's why the Za has been included with the Sad and the Sin in the as-safir category of sifat. So this is something, when you are reading the Quran, you will notice this. It's an intrinsic part of these letters, and you cannot get away from them, and that's why it's in the sifat. Now, if you are pronouncing the Sad and the Sin or the Za and you are not getting a whistling sound or a buzzing sound, that means you are not touching the tip of the tongue to the lower incisors. You are just saying like S, or similar to S, where there's not too much of a whistling sound, but with Sad and Sin and Za there's more. Okay, so this is something that needs to be practiced, and practice with your teachers. Number 2 is a Leen. A Leen is very simple. It's the Leen letters are Waw and Ya, which are preceded by a Fatha. So it's A and O. So these is very soft and easy to say, these letters, and that's why a Leen is included in the softness. So A and O. And one thing, if you notice about A and O are longer than 1 haraka duration but shorter than the 2 haraka duration, and that is known as mad and ma, which means that it's sort of like 1.5 harakat. So it's like A and A here is shorter than A and O, but A and O is shorter than E and U. E and U are longer, and A or O are shorter, and A is even shorter. So we can see that a Leen has a special sort of condition in terms of the lengthening. Number 3 is an al-inhiraf, the drifting. Now the drifting applies to the letters Ra and Lam. Now when these letters are pronounced, the letters can leave their articulation points by drifting from their articulation points from one place to another. Now when you're reciting, you'll find that sometimes when you're pronouncing the Ra, when it's got a shadda on it and it's fatha, and when you're pronouncing the Ra when it's kasra, and when you're pronouncing the Ra when there's a kasra, there's a sakin on the Ra which is preceded by a kasra. In all of these situations, the Ra will slightly move away from its haraka, and this is something that you will notice. It's a natural part of the Lam and the Ra. They will be drifting, but they are around the same general areas of articulation. So this is something that you will realize when you're reading the Quran, and you will find that they're drifting from their articulation point. Number 4 is at-takrar, or also known as at-takrir. Both of them are correct. So the repetition applies to the letter Ra. It is easy to repeat this letter because of the natural friction which is created with this letter. Now, if you notice with the Ra, because you are touching the top of the palate, something can happen, and I'll try and do it in the video so you can hear it, and that's like arr, arr. So it's like friction, almost like when you start a motorbike, and it has that sort of initial sound that it starts with the arr, like that. So this is something which occurs naturally with the Ra, especially when the Ra is sakin on it, or it's got shadda. But this is a quality which needs to be avoided to preserve the recitation of the Quran. Now, when we are reciting the Ra with the sakin on it, when you say ar, you don't want to say ar. You say ar, ar, ar. You need to restrict the repetition. Maybe to just 1.5. Why? Because the repetition is a natural part of the Ra. However, you need to restrict it. You see, if it's not repeated at all, then it's just like ar, ar, and even with that it's a repetition, but I can't actually do it. But if you don't repeat it, then the Ra will not sound correct, and it won't have that strength to that Ra. So when you're repeating, maybe 1.5 repetition, but no more than that. So that's something that needs to be avoided when you're reading the Ra. Number 5 is Tafashi. So Tafashi is the spreading around which occurs with the sheen. So the letter starts from its articulation point until it spreads and collides with the inner teeth. And actually you'll find that with the sheen, it's a much fuller sound than the English SH. In English, when you're pronouncing SH, then it's a very narrow sound, which means that you start from the articulation of the sheen, of the SH, and it just goes straight out of the mouth. However, when you are pronouncing the sheen, it's a much fuller sh sound. So when you say ashhadu is different to she. She is very light, but ashhadu is fuller. So this is something that you'll find, that the sheen needs to actually spread around, the sound needs to spread around in your mouth to ensure the sheen in Arabic is being pronounced correctly. The 6th sifa which we are going to look at in this video is Al-Istitala. Al-Istitala is the lengthening, and the lengthening occurs with the letter Dad. Now, of course, I've mentioned before that Dad is a very special letter. It's a letter which does not occur in any other language, so therefore it needs to be practiced. Number 1, it's got the sifa of being al-isti'ala, and it's al-itbaq, and the makhraj is pronounced from the side of the tongue, touching the upper molars, whether the left or the right or both, and it also has al-istitala. So al-istitala is when you're pronouncing the Dad, and this is especially apparent when the Dad is sakin, is that you lengthen the sound. And this happens when? It happens because of the pressure which is applied in this letter, in that the side of the tongue ends up touching the gums of the back of the teeth. So it touches the back of the teeth and ends up touching the gums. So it sort of slides up like that, and also can slide forward. But you don't want to slide forward. Maybe sliding up is the better, because it creates a better sound for the Dad. So when you say, you don't want to say ad, the sound stops very quickly. But when you want to pronounce the Dad properly, you say ad. So you stay on the sound of the Dad, and it sort of slides up to the gums, ensuring that the al-istitala is being given, the correct due of the Dad is being given. So you say ad, it's lengthening the sound of the Dad. So this concludes the letters on Sifat. All of the Sifat are the intricate rules which require extensive practice. It's not something that someone can get overnight. It's something that requires a lot of practice, and with an expert teacher who can check whether the Sifat are being applied to the particular letters. Now, the lessons of Makhraj and Sifat are inherently linked, and they should be practiced in tandem with each other, which means together. Listen to the master reciters. The master reciters are those which have been given to you, like Al-Husari and Al-Mishari and Mishawi and Hudhayfi and so on, and constantly practice yourself and read to your appointed teacher to master these letters and all of the others as well. So that concludes the lesson on Sifat al-Mutadada. So you can practice this and do the required lesson with your and exercises with your appointed teachers.
Salam Alykum. Be sure to download your free implementation workbook. We go through it step by step. All the videos correspond with it. We have laid it out very strategically so you can master Quranic Tajweed and Quranic Mastery and implement it while you go along. Okay, so be sure to download this and it will help you on your journey. It's free to download. The link should be in the description. Assalamu alaikum. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please like this video so we know you enjoy it, as we can make more. Please write a comment and tell us what you thought about the lesson. And don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe now. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum.